Welcome back into a special holiday edition of Cleveland Sports Realm here. I'm back in studio. I know everybody's thrilled about that. Maybe not so much. We'll find out. And we have Kevin back here, the mainstay. And we have a special guest here all the way from Boston. He came to join us, Phil Sprons, a.k.a. The Clown. How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Good to see
absolutely.
you guys.
Yeah, it's good to have you back in town. Now, Phil was a friend of ours who moved out east, but he's a good guy, good sports mind. So with him being back in town for the holidays, we decided to have him on the pod tonight. So, gentlemen, without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's get into the college football playoff. We had some absolutely great games yesterday, particularly for the Ohio State University. And a couple of days ago, we'll give the Fighting Irish their props too. They did all right.
Thank you.
Kevin's Fighting Irish.
Thank
and
you.
they took care of Indiana. And also Penn State took care of SMU. I have some thoughts on that. Penn State really doesn't get any credit in my mind for that. And then finally, Texas took care of Clemson. So let's react to these first round games. First, we got to start with Ohio State. Utter domination in Columbus tonight. And before I go to you guys, I got to get my thoughts out on this. All we heard, Rocky Top's taking over the North, Rocky Top's dominating this, that. Well, guess what? None of it happened. The only thing that did happen, there were a lot of Tennessee fans, not as many as we originally projected, but they do travel well. We'll give them credit for that. They travel well, but the people should have saved their money and stayed home because they just got an utter ass whooping last night.
Yeah, it was kind of unbelievable because that was the one game that everybody was looking at as the game to watch the entire week. When it came to, we didn't know which team was going to win. You know, everybody thought Notre Dame was going to beat Indiana. You know, Penn State take care of SMU, Texas take care of Clemson, and it came down to this. We thought this was going to be the 50-50 game, and this ended up being the route that nobody really saw coming.
Well, back to it. Ohio State needed it. You know, Ryan Day felt the pressure. I mean, the guy hasn't won a big game. We've talked about that. At least I have on the podcast multiple times. You've defended him. But the fan base needed that. They needed that confidence. And they got back to what works. They have outstanding weapons on the outside. Jeremiah Smith was a dog last night, man. He was awesome. Will Howard played good, played smart, got the ball to his weapons, did what he had to do. They ran the ball effectively. They played great defense. Jack Sawyer off the edge was a machine last night. I mean, everything went perfect and according to script. And again, I think it was a win that Ryan Day needed and the fan base needed to see Ryan Day have his team ready to play like that because we lost confidence in the guy. He stunk.
Yeah, Ohio State's completely fine. I think they have been completely fine for the last handful of weeks. And I think looking back on it now, and we might look back on it in a few more weeks and think that the Michigan loss was a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction from the fan base. They came out and showed last night they have the firepower, they have the talent. That's what's going to be sustainable over the course of the playoff. And playing at home helped even more. Like, roll the ball out there, come in with a good game plan, and they were up 3 scores within the first handful of minutes, it felt like.
Yeah, I agree with Phil on this because we're looking back, and we had talked about this a couple weeks ago after the Michigan loss, but Ryan Day's been a 10-plus win coach every year that he's been at Ohio State, and the year that he didn't win 10 wins, he went to the national championship game. So I've always thought that game's been a little bit overrated, and I think you're right, Phil. I think that it was a knee-jerk reaction. It's a rivalry game. You know, some teams are going to go on streaks against their rivalry teams. Some teams aren't, and you know, Ohio State happens to be on the other end of it, but also Michigan happens to not even be relevant right now. So Ohio State gets the playoff win. They get to face Oregon. They get the revenge game that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and we'll see how they fare.
Well, the one thing I'm going to push back on a little bit is you guys say that it was a knee-jerk. See, the one thing I will say, again, Ohio State has enough talent that you could have producer Derek coach them to beat Northwestern and this and that. Like I'm not giving Ryan Day any credit for that. But when it comes to big games, he had fallen short most of the time. There's no other way to put it. But last night's makes me feel a lot better about him. He had time to prepare. And again, Tennessee, I mean, it's not like let's give the Volunteers their credit. First of all, they did travel pretty well. We talked about that. And their fans do travel well. Their team, however, didn't, for one. And for two, that is still a good Tennessee team. Ohio State was just that much better in every single area last night. I mean, and again, I'll give their defense a lot of credit too, because it seemed like Tennessee's quarterback had no time to throw, and credit to Jim Knowles and his defense. They were awesome.
See, yeah, you talk about these big time losses that Ryan Day has, which he has, but he also does have some big time wins. He has 2 huge wins against Notre Dame over the last 3 years, and he has 2 wins against 2 current playoff teams this year, against Indiana and Penn State.
Yeah.
So yeah, you drop one occasionally, but you also have some huge wins that I think you have to look at as a positive thing with him.
Yeah, the point of the matter is you lose games, and I think with the previous format, there was less cushion to lose games. So 1 loss meant a ton.
Right.
Now you can get in with 2 losses, right?
Yep.
Right.
And there's 12 teams, so there's more cushion. And it hurts a lot because it's Michigan. But, hey, they lost 1 game to an unranked team, and they lost a game to Oregon, who was the perennial number 1 seed, right?
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
By
coming
1
in.
point on Oregon's turf, too.
Yeah,
so.
right, on Oregon's turf. So I know it's Michigan, and it hurts, and it stings, but they were a 2-loss team. Really the only thing – and they still came away with a home playoff game to open, which was great.
Right.
So still, after all that, you're set up for success. Now, the only difficult part, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, is they've cut out a really hard part of the bracket where now they're going to have to play Oregon again, and then potentially the winner of Penn State, which could be Penn State later on. That could be hard, and that's where the Michigan loss could bite you in the butt. But you still have a path here. It wasn't like the season was
Right.
over. That's
No,
what
I
I'm
mean,
saying. Yeah.
as you know, listen, I'm wearing the scarlet and gray proud today, man. Like they made me really proud and really excited last night, and I feel good. And we'll get there after we recap these other games. I do feel good going into the matchup with Oregon and the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl. I do feel good, and like I said, I can't give the guy enough credit. I know I've been very critical of him. And like I said, that's not here nor there. Some of it's, maybe a little too harsh of me. But I can't give the guy enough credit last night because they came out like gangbusters, man. And you got to give a coach credit when he deserves it. And again, that's not a bad Tennessee team. That's a damn good Tennessee team.
And here's the thing. The test of resilience is the test of a championship team, right? So I'm not defending Ryan Day, but we might look back and say the loss to Michigan woke them up.
Yeah.
And said we have to come with a game plan. We can't take anyone lightly. This is the playoffs. We still have a shot at it. They came out swinging, and it's all about resilience and peaking at the right time, right? We might look back on this and say, the Michigan loss really propelled them into the playoffs and said, hey, it's no more messing around. Let's come to play. And I'm excited to see what they do in the second round. Like they're playing hot now.
Well, yeah, and that's what I've talked about because obviously a lot of people nationally have looked back when it comes to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish as at that Northern Illinois loss that they had on their home turf week 2. And I think that may have been the best thing that happened to Notre Dame, considering they've won like every game since then, to your point, Phil, by like 2+ touchdowns. It was like, okay, we can't take any team lightly anymore. Like we have to show up week in and week out to have a shot at this thing. And I think Phil's got a point. I think when you look at that Ohio State-Michigan game, obviously heartbreaking from your guys' standpoint. You want to win that huge rivalry game year in and year out and have that conference championship bid. But it woke them up, and that was one of the most impressive Ohio State wins that I've seen in my entire lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, I was super impressed, like I said. And I know I mentioned him earlier, but can we talk about Jeremiah Smith? And I know we produce elite level receivers like it's our job there.
Right.
But this kid is special, man. I mean, he just always seems to be open, and no corner can keep up with him. I mean, he's unbelievable.
Yeah, he might be the most impressive true freshman receiver that I've ever seen. Just when it comes to, I mean, we've looked at, we talk about all the great receivers that have come through Ohio State: Marvin Harrison, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Terry McLean. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Right.
Of these elite receivers that Ohio State just churns out. But when it comes to true freshmen making an impact immediately, I don't think we've seen one, not even in Ohio State, but just in college football in general, like Jeremiah Smith.
The only one that I could think of in recent memory at Ohio State was Garrett Wilson was impactful almost immediately, but it wasn't. He was impactful, but not at this high of a level. Like this kid's different, man.
Yeah, no, you guys had nailed the head. I just that.
Yeah, no, he's phenomenal, and he's right there with Ryan Williams from Bama, and those two are kind of in a class, or I guess I should say a tier above just about everybody else in college football when it comes to freshman wideouts.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Ohio State University will go on to face the Oregon Ducks in the Rose Bowl, and we'll get there. But first, I think we got to give some of these other games a little bit of time. Kevin, Notre Dame, you didn't have much confidence. I wasn't here for last week's pod. Doesn't mean I didn't listen and tune in and know what's going on. I was under the weather. I was really sick with a stomach virus, so glad to be over that. But boy, I got to give your Irish credit. They came out, and I'm telling you, outside of my Buckeyes with Travion and Quinshawn, Jeremiah Love and Jatavian Price might be the second best running back combination in the country. Those guys ran the football at will. And I'll tell you who we can really laugh at that's not Ryan Day, coaching the big. This Kirk Cignetti. How about this guy? Runs his mouth, been shooting his mouth off nonstop.
Yeah.
And his team looked about as ready to play as, a high school team. I mean, and that game was not nearly as close as the final score indicated.
Yeah, Indiana got their last 2 touchdowns, I think, in the last 5 minutes. It was 27-3 with 6 minutes left to go, and everybody kind of knew what the outcome of that game was. Notre Dame was playing the typical prevent defense. Let's just make sure that we get the clock down as much as possible. Whatever the score ends up being, it is. And yeah, it was a pretty handed game early. Jeremiah Love, to your point, I think he's a top 5 running back in the country. I've been on him pretty early in the year. I'm glad he's getting the national recognition that he is, because he's a do-it-all kind of running back, man. He catches out of the backfield. He's got sprinter speed on that 98-yard touchdown to lead off the game in the first 5 minutes. That was amazing to see. And to your point, Jerome, the running back duo, Jadarian Price is a great running back as well. He's more of the power in that duo. But yeah, Jeremiah Love just jumping over people, juking people out, trucking people. He's a jack of all trades. And I was expecting a little bit of a different game plan when it came to Notre Dame, because Jeremiah Love only had 10 touches the entire game, which was kind of shocking. And Riley Leonard threw the ball 30-plus times, and he's known more so for running the ball or getting out of the pocket. He's not known for throwing it too much. So it was an interesting game plan, but it prevailed. And, we're looking at, Notre Dame facing Georgia this upcoming week. It should be a great game.
I think that's a really good game.
Yeah, I think outside of Ohio State, Oregon, I think those are the 2 biggest games in terms of watchability this week. And it's going to be interesting to see those 2 teams.
Yeah, if you watch
battle.
the game and you're a Notre Dame fan, which you are, I would have the utmost confidence for how they played. They were in control of the game the whole time.
Yeah.
And saying that the score was closer than it seemed is 100% true. Indiana had some last minute points there at the end to make it look a little closer, but in terms of the control of the pace, the game plan, everything, Notre Dame was fully prepared and ready for that, and there were no questions asked. Kind of a bomb by Indiana. I know they had a lot of hype going in, and it was an in-state game, and everyone's saying it's kind of, going to be a mix of both fan bases and stuff. But Notre Dame seems pretty legit. This seems like one of the most legit Notre Dame teams I've seen in the last handful of years, right? They've come in, had great seasons before, haven't played a lot of people. They always have the fact that they're not in a conference, kind of devalues them a little, and then maybe they get in a big game, and they kind of bomb a little, but the real test is the next one, because I really think the Georgia game is going to be great, but no problem with Indiana, which to me is a huge vote of confidence in the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think, like I said, talk about people wearing egg on their face. No one more in America right now than Indiana's head coach, Kirk Cignetti. I mean, he talked an unnecessary amount of crap going into that game. And I like a coach who talks a little bit, but one big thing that all 3 of us know growing up and playing sports, you're going to shoot your mouth off. You better back it up. That team, I mean, they got their butts kicked right from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, they absolutely did, and they just looked like they came in with too much confidence. Their only loss being to Ohio State earlier this year. I think they had a lot of confidence in the sense of that they felt that they blew that game more than Ohio State won it, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I feel like if they kind of came into the game with the mentality that if we don't turn the ball over, we're going to win that game. And after Riley Leonard threw that early pick, Indiana's quarterback, it's Rourke, right? I forget what his first name is. Curtis Rourke had a bad throw. Xavier Watts, great safety for Notre Dame, comes down with it, and Jeremiah Love gets that 98-yard touchdown right off the rip, and the Irish were off and rolling right there.
Well, and the other thing I think that this does show is a lot of people's big question about Indiana was they hadn't played anybody. And to be honest with you, I mean, we kind of talked about that back when Ohio State played Indiana several podcasts ago. But it kind of did come up to ring true, because Indiana really didn't beat anybody impressive all year. When your best win is against a 7-5 Michigan team, there were some fair questions there. And then anytime they played anybody good, they got their ass kicked. I mean, they played Ohio State and they played Notre Dame, and then both times it didn't work out.
Yeah, and I think you're building towards a larger point I might want to make at the end of this about how some of these first round matchups have gone, and it's maybe an even emphasis on that we still don't know where these teams are despite the rankings, right? Straight the schedule matters, conference matters. We always try to rank them. I think it's great now that we have 12 to pick from. There's just less people that are left out, so we can finally hopefully see who the best teams are at the end. But some of these first round matchups have been a little lopsided, and I think we might look back at, I know it's the first year, so it's not a big pool and statistic to look back on, but we might look back and be like, you know, rankings do matter, but really strength of schedule, other things matter as well. Because some of these matchups haven't gone or been as close as we might thought they might have been, you know?
Yeah, I think the only one that was ever really in question, at least within the first half, was the Texas-Clemson game. Phil, to your point, just about all of these games seemed like we knew who was going to win by halftime.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with that. And Kevin, I'll tell you what, I'm sure, and there's times I've picked against my teams and stuff like that, but isn't it feel so darn good to be wrong? Because you did pick the Hoosiers, and it probably felt amazing.
Oh, absolutely. The thing is, from me watching Notre Dame my entire life, they're known to blow these games. They haven't won a college football playoff game until this most recent year, and every time it seemed like they had that top 5 matchup. They had Georgia, I want to say 2018-19. They had a back-to-back with Georgia. They had the back-to-back with Ohio State just last year and the year prior, and they haven't come out on top in either of those games. So I was like, another big-time game, season on the line. I thought they were going to drop it, and I'm so happy that I was wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. Those are the best times to feel to be wrong. And so both of our teams moved. So let's move to the other games. So we didn't have any rooting interest here. The SMU Mustangs, the Ponies, ponied on up to State College and played the Nittany Lions. Penn State 38-10. Here's my take on this game. Penn State didn't impress me at all. They did nothing. I mean, SMU, Kevin Jennings, their quarterback, okay, right, 20 of 36, 195 yards, touchdown, 3 picks. Penn State's first 2 touchdowns were pick sixes that were just horrendous play calls. And Kevin Jennings, also, they went for it 4th and 1 to try to, I don't know, assert their dominance, whatever the Mustangs were trying to do. And he had an easy first down, and he throws an ill-advised throw on a 4th down way over the tight end's head. And it's like, what are you doing? I'm going to say that this game, it didn't make me think Penn State's any better. I thought this was simply one thing happened in this game. Kevin Jennings crapped all over himself, and Penn State was the beneficiary. I mean, that's what happened. You look at the numbers here. Drew Aller, 13 of 22, 127 yards. I mean, that's pretty rough. The one thing that Penn State did against Oregon in the Big Ten title game, and they did again well against SMU, they can really run the ball. But Drew Aller's not really, in this game, didn't play well. So I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions here about the Nittany Lions.
Jerome, would you say that Penn State won the game or SMU lost the game?
Oh, SMU lost the game, 110%.
That's the point I was gonna make.
By 28 points.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but you 2 pick sixes right off the bat. You hand them 14 points.
And then the 4th down play call. Yeah, I don't think we could fully say it because of the differential. and Penn State has shown they could run the ball pretty consistently, and they played Oregon super tough. But, you know, SMU did shoot themselves in the foot a little here, right? So it was a little bit of an easier first-round matchup than you'd expect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was definitely an easier first-round matchup, but also at the same time, like, Penn State won a playoff game by 4 touchdowns. Like, I'm not sitting here saying that Tennessee's quarterback crapped all over himself because they lost big time. Like, kudos to Ohio State, kudos to Penn State.
But you saw Ohio State do things that you're like, wow, Ohio State is winning this. Like SMU's just handing you things on golden platters. Like they did not, like Penn State did nothing besides run the football well to impress me. Like, and if you watch the game, the pick sixes, they're bad guys. They're real bad. Like they're hideous. Like,
are you talking about SMU being bad, or are you talking about the plays themselves?
I'm talking about the decisions by Kevin Jennings, the Southern Methodist quarterback.
Sure, and obviously Ohio State's win was more dominant. It was more impressive, and it was also over a bigger name school, obviously.
And a better team.
Sure, yeah, a better team as well, but you know, I'm not sitting here like Penn State. That's still an impressive win to me to win a playoff game by 4 touchdowns when everybody going into that game is shouting that James Franklin's a fraud and that he can't win a big game, and then he finally does by 4 touchdowns, and we're still discrediting it.
Oh yeah, I'm going to. I'm sorry. I thought okay. You could say what you want. SMU. This was way more about SMU. Penn State did nothing to impress me. And when we get to upcoming predictions here. I'll have some things to say. That it won't surprise you by what I'm preambling here, but
I don't know if they're going to surprise you based off of your preamble right now. I think we know where you're going
some
with
things
this.
that won't surprise you. That's
Oh,
what I
okay.
said. Yeah.
Okay.
We're not going to be. No one's going to be
But
shocked.
again, Penn State did nothing, and I actually thought they played significantly worse than they did in the Big Ten title game. Like again, they ran the ball well, and they have really good running backs like Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen. Are really, really talented, and the line up front's really good. But I don't trust Aller. I mean, again, SMU. What do you think? Because he obviously disagrees with me. That's fine.
I think it's a little combination of the both. I definitely.
Oh, you're gonna play the middle here?
Yeah, always with you two.
Very political.
Yeah, always with you two. No, you can't throw 2 picks right off the bat in a playoff game. You're kind of handing them it, right? You can't start from that point of leverage in a playoff game. You can't have that, right?
Right.
Lack of experience, just definitely shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
But also Penn State, they do. We can't keep saying it and then not give them credit. Like they do run the ball really well.
Right.
They played consistently and they won by a good margin in a playoff game. So I don't think there's a lot you can take from it and say, oh wow, Penn State looks great. You can't say they look bad either. So we'll have to see when we come to our second round predictions. The only other addition I'll have to this is shout out to my hometown, Strongsville, because SMU's logo was our high school logo. Mustangs, yeah. So that's why I like that. But other than that, not really much we can tell from this game, Jerome.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to disagree on that, or Kevin and I are. You're going to play the middle ground, which is nice to do as a guest host.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll move right along
Coming
here.
here with some big opinion.
Yeah. That's what we were hoping for. Now, and maybe there's still plenty to go here.
Yeah.
I got time.
The number 5 seed Texas Longhorns hosted Dabo's Clemson Tigers, 38-24. Guys, from this game, it was close for a while, but Texas was the better team. And unlike Penn State, Texas impressed me because I thought they did a really crappy job in the SEC title game. They couldn't move the ball. Quinn Ewers looked bad, and they put up 38 points against Clemson. Is pretty impressive to me. You know what? I'm going to give Texas a little credit, and they answered a lot of the questions that a lot of folks, including myself, had about them going into this game.
Yeah, they totally did because, when we were talking last week, I didn't feel confident picking Texas based off of what you were just saying. That SEC championship game took a lot of my confidence out in that team. I had no confidence in Quinn Ewers, no confidence in Sarkisian, and they ended up pulling it out, and they covered the spread by half a point. It was a 13.5-point spread. I had been saying all last week to hammer the Clemson spread, and I couldn't have been more wrong on that. Well, I shouldn't say couldn't have been more wrong. It was a half a point. But at the same time, I was wrong. I was wrong. But
right. Yeah.
But Dabo, I trusted him in that moment. He didn't come through. Clemson's season's over, and Texas is moving on.
No, Clemson didn't have the talent this year. I felt like they were back and forth all season. They barely snuck in. I've wanted Texas to be good for years.
Have you?
Yes.
Since Colt McCoy.
Vince
probably.
Young, maybe.
Because they're a big school, they have a ton of money, and it's good for the country. We need Texas to do good, right? It would be fantastic if Texas was good.
It is.
Right?
It's good for college football.
For college football, if Texas was good.
Yep.
They're not good. They're never good. But this year, they have a good, talented team, so I hope they win. I'm honestly kind of rooting for them. But what I'm saying is they're kind of hit or miss with the way they've played. With what you were saying about Ewers and stuff, I agree. It's like you see a lot of good, you see a lot of bad. They could easily bomb with given the wrong matchup. But it would be good if Texas was good. It would be a new team. It would be a team in a state that loves football. It's rah-rah America for Texas, man.
Well, yeah, and it's one of those popular things that no matter whether you're hook 'em or you're putting the horns down, like it's a popular thing to love or hate. I think you're right, Phil. I think it's great for college football that Texas is relevant again.
Texas has been they've been trending in the right direction. Like they're getting there, they're trying.
Cam Ellinger, those years, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
Texas is working their way back into.
I think
or Sam Ellinger,
they
I
haven't
should
put
say.
it all together, is what I'm saying.
think-
Even with this team,
Right.
I'm still not totally sold on them because one day you watch them and then the SEC championship game, I'm like disappointed in them.
Right.
And I don't think they have it. But
Yeah.
even this team's like that borderline. But like it'd be great if Texas won another game.
Yeah.
Like that'd be great. Like, we need
I will
Texas
say
in
this:
there.
when I think they officially got on the map for a lot of people was they had a non-conference game about 3 or 4 years ago or so with Alabama, and they lost by a field goal in overtime. And I think that game in Texas put them back up because a lot of people were like, they got no chance against Saban's, Crimson Tide. And,
Right.
and that game kind of got them back.
Real quick, aren't you so happy they're not in it?
Oh,
Alabama's
so
Oh,
happy,
yeah.
dude.
so happy.
Oh, yeah.
they're
So
not in
happy.
it.
I thought
Yeah.
that even though SMU got blown out, I still think they got it right with the teams that were in.
We have new teams this year, like Indiana in a non-basketball sport.
Yeah.
They're getting
Yeah.
great.
And if you're
Yeah,
if you're 9-3 and you're complaining about not making it, just shut up. You're 9-3. You lost 3 times. 2 of those losses to a 6-6 team.
yeah, go play in the Cheez-It Bowl and try to win that.
Yeah.
Pop Tart, but go bowl or whatever you want to play in.
Yeah.
but you didn't make the top 12.
Well,
Sorry.
and they still listen. Like the only 3 lost team that made it in was the Tigers, but they did what was necessary to do. The automatic qualifier. They
Yeah,
won
they
their
won the
conference title
conference,
game.
yeah.
So if you're going to be a 3-loss team, to me, you have to get that AQ. Otherwise, I don't want to see
100%.
it.
Yeah,
100%.
Then win your
Yeah.
conference, and but that's great because that puts focus on the regular season. It puts focus on the conference championship.
Yeah.
so that we're not just playing games for nothing.
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
also liked the improvement of the regular season. Not to go off on a tangent here, but
Go
they
ahead.
have better teams in the conferences. So instead of playing Appalachian State or the equal for 12 games a year, you got to play Oregon.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then now I have to watch regular season college football matchups in September and October that are actually solid instead of watching Ohio State beat Florida A&M by 50, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that matters for conference championship seeding and for an automatic bid.
Right.
I just think it's just down the line much better.
Yeah, and to your guys' both points, you're talking about you got to be 9-3. If you're 9-3, you got to have that conference championship in order to propel you to whatever. That's exactly what Clemson did, and that's exactly
Right,
how
yeah,
Clemson
right.
got in.
Right.
So I think you're both right. I agree with both of you on this, and yeah, that's pretty much it on that.
And again, going back to the Ohio State point, I know Ohio State has high standards. I think there's a lot of value in that, but you don't go undefeated every year. You might lose one of those games because the matchups
Sure.
are good now.
Absolutely.
So now it's okay. We lost a game. The world's not over. Maybe we lost 2. Maybe we can still get in with the at-large
Yep.
bid, right?
Yep.
But and I'm not saying value losing. I'm just saying you might have trials and tribulations through a season where you have to bounce back. Which again, that resilience is what playoff championship teams need to do anyway.
Oh, exactly. And you look back at these, before even the 4-team college playoff, there were great teams who were 11-1 that never even got a shot. But now it's like you can afford a slip up. You know what I'm saying? When it
Yeah.
comes to the college football season, it's like, okay, you might not bring your best every week, but as long as you have a chance, then you have a chance.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
All right. Well, I was going to hold all this off till next week when I knew we were having the great guest host here with us. So
Thank you.
the great Phil Sprounds.
yeah. So I decided we're going to do this week so we can include his opinion, and let's preview these quarterfinal matchups, gentlemen.
Okay.
So I have the lines in front of us, and I have the seeds and all that, and so we're going to start. Let's start with the Arizona State Sun Devils, who got the first round bye by winning the Big 12 title game, and they will be playing the Texas Longhorns, the 4-5 matchup in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, which will take place in Atlanta, Georgia. Give me Arizona State here, which is the higher seed. Guys, they're the higher seeded team. They're 14-point dogs on the spread. I like Arizona State in this game.
Wait, and I'm thinking about this live. When was the last time they played? Because is there value in getting the bye if you haven't played in a month? And Texas played, now they get 10, 12-ish days off. So they get some rest, too. It's not like they're coming in after the next week.
it would be
you
like
know?
2.5.
I
'Cause
wonder
they-
how
3
that.
weeks.
The scheduling to me is interesting. I don't
It
know
is,
the timeline
it is.
there.
And maybe they'll figure better that all out, but it's also, this is our guinea pig year, right? Like, this is the first
Yeah.
time we've done this thing, this
Yeah.
style. And so I think we're all figuring it out on the fans, the committees. We're all figuring it out on the go here. And Arizona State did play in the Big 12 title game. They beat the brinks off Iowa State.
Yeah, they did.
So let's, you could bring up a good point. Maybe too much rest.
Yeah, potentially because Texas is getting rest as well. And it's over
Right.
a week's rest.
Right.
If my math's right.
Yeah, 'cause you're
It's like a
playing
week and a
here.
half.
And
Yeah.
a week, so they get a week and a half rest, which is plenty. They played
Yeah.
a game. They played well. Arizona has been sitting at home for
Arizona State.
Arizona
Yeah, right.
State has been sitting at home for quite a while now.
Right.
I'm just saying that I'm not changing my prediction or making a prediction. I'm saying that could impact the game.
Oh,
Rest
absolutely.
versus
That's
rust.
going to be rest versus a lot of rest.
Right.
Rest versus essentially like restarting almost. It could
Yeah.
feel like
Right.
You know,
And, this is where coaching comes into it. You got to have those guys, doing drills that keep you fresh, live hit, put the pads on at practice. And I know in the NFL there's, you can only do that so much with the Players Association. Now, I don't think there's rules for that in college. I could be totally wrong. If somebody in the comments knows, go ahead and feel free to comment on
But
the
also,
episode.
they've had more time to game plan, and they've had an extra game of film to watch, right?
But
I don't think that nets out, but that's another factor that could be pro rest.
I mean, you can't. They'll have more time to scout. I'll give you that. Game plan though, you couldn't automatically assume it was going to be Texas, right? Like, so they didn't.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
Yep.
but you do. Don't get me wrong. I guarantee you, Arizona State had all their people sitting there front and center in Texas, in Austin yesterday, watching that game. Anyway, to preview this game, I like Arizona State, and it's like, can we call it an upset? They're the higher seed, but they're they don't have nearly the notoriety that Texas does. They're 14-point dogs. I like Arizona State. They can run the ball well. If they get their top receiver back, they really impress me. They have a young, bright offensive mind in their coach. I like the Sun Devils.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to the Texas-Arizona State matchup, I like Arizona State matching up with them. Like I feel like they match up well, but I don't think I can pick them to win it. Like I think Scadaboo is going to have a very good game, but I just have a gut feeling that Arizona State is going to have a major key turnover, or maybe two of them, that just they can't get themselves back into the game. And I think you can absolutely call it an upset, even though they're the higher seed. If you're looking at the actual rankings themselves, Arizona State falls around like 12-ish, I want to say is what it is. But they obviously have that bid based off winning the conference championship, so that pushes them up like 8 spots. I like Texas in this one. I think Scadaboo's going to have a good game. I think they match up well, like I said, but I think Texas is going to be able to prevail in this one.
Yeah. I'm not going to sit here and act like I've watched a lot of ASU Sun Devil football.
No, I'll
year.
tell you what. I watched them towards the end of the year a little bit, and I'm not going to pretend I watched their whole 12-game slate myself. But when I did, I was thoroughly impressed.
And my prediction's purely off vibes, and I'm taking Texas for the country, like I described earlier. But I have now. Fun fact here. It'll go off on a tangent. I have been out to Tempe, Arizona, where Arizona State's campus is.
Okay.
And I went to a bar called the Devil's Advocate, which I thought was kind of cute.
Great name for a bar.
That is
kinda
supposedly
cool,
like
right?
that's their big fan bar.
That's
Yes.
a phenomenal
In fact, when
name
they
for a
played
bar.
the Big 12 championship, they showed the fans going crazy.
It was a good time.
Whooping it up
It
over
was
there
a
at the
good time.
Devil's
Yeah.
Advocate.
At the Devil's Advocate?
The Devil's
They
Advocate.
did show that. They're
which
in a
is
big-
kind of cool. But give me the Longhorns
Hook 'em.
for Texas.
Hook 'em.
For the troops. We
Yeah.
need that. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Off nothing alone, I have not watched
Just
any
vibes.
ASU football this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, like I said, 14-point favorites Texas is, and that is going to be the Peach Bowl. Let's move over to the Fiesta Bowl. The 3 seed Boise State Broncos against the 6 seed, the unimpressive Penn State Nittany Lions. Now, listen, this game, the running backs in this game are awesome. I mean, you're talking about Nick Singleton. You talk about Katron Allen. Obviously, the whole country knows about Ashton Genty. Both teams are going to want to run the football, but the team that's going to do it is going to be the Boise State Broncos, just a little bit better. I think this is going to be a really, really good game. I like Boise State in the upset here. And again, I'm going to call it an upset because that's what Vegas thinks. Nittany Lions are 10.5-point favorites. I'm going to take the dog here, Boise State, not just to cover the spread, but win outright in a close game.
Yeah, it would absolutely be an upset, even though they're the higher seed, just like we were talking about with Texas and Arizona State. But when it comes to this game, I'm picking Penn State. I think the Broncos definitely run the ball better. They have the best running back in the country. Runner-up for Heisman, maybe even should have been the Heisman.
Right.
But I think Penn State runs the ball very well, and they have the better quarterback. I trust their defense more as well. I just think they're a better overall team. They're more well-rounded. So I'm going to go with the Nittany Lions in this one.
So, real quick before we go to Phil here, James
Sure.
Franklin, that was like his second quote-unquote big win of all time. I think he's 2-15 now.
Okay.
So, again,
Yeah,
that's
2 and a week and a half for me then that he's going to have.
Yeah, well, I don't see it. But anyway,
It'll happen.
I will say that guy, if you don't trust Ryan Day in big games, that guy really, he leaves a lot to be desired in big games.
Yeah, I can't be neutral here. Penn State's going to win this game. In my opinion, they're just more battle-tested, man.
Yeah, no, they've
They
played.
had I know they lost the games, but playing Oregon, playing Ohio State, Big Ten was tough this year.
Yeah.
They fared pretty well with a pretty good record. They run the ball consistently, which I think is sustainable over the long course of a game in a grinded out playoff atmosphere. I'll take Penn State in this game.
Just like
to be fair, real quick before we get back to you, Jerome, I apologize for interrupting you.
You're fine.
But Boise State's only loss this year. They're 12-1, and their only losses to Oregon on Oregon's turf by 3 points. So they played Oregon extremely close.
That's a good point.
But I still, to your point, the Nittany Lions are still more battle tested. They faced better teams than Boise State has, including Oregon. Nittany Lions.
That's exactly the point I was going to make.
Oh,
Boise
okay.
State's lost to be the devil's advocate, just like that bar out
Nice.
in Tempe.
Yeah, good one.
To be the devil's advocate here. Yeah, again,
Come back for
Boise
full
State.
circle on that one.
Boise State played Oregon just as tough as Penn State did. Now,
Yeah.
granted, it was a lot earlier in the season, and we know no matter what sport, what league, what team you're talking about, the team that took the field in September is not the team taking the field on New Year's Day when this game will take place.
Yep.
But yeah, I tell you what, when Boise State did play it, they played them tough, and I think Boise State's going to do it, guys. I like the two underdogs according to Vegas here so far early.
Okay.
Now we get to, let's go to your game first before we talk about mine.
Sounds good.
Let's go to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish playing the Georgia Bulldogs in the All-State Sugar Bowl.
This is going to be a really good game.
And Vegas agrees with you.
Yeah.
The Dogs are 1.5 point favorites right now. We know that's about as close to a pick 'em as you can get. Kevin, I like Notre Dame in this game. It's going to be a really good game, but no Carson back. Some folks are actually saying Gunnar Stockton might give Georgia a better chance to win. I really think this is going to be a close game, but I think Notre Dame's ability to run the ball, and Georgia has a good D-line. My biggest question is, does Riley Leonard make a stupid turnover? I've watched him do that a lot this year.
Yeah, it happens with him for sure. And, Notre Dame's defense is a phenomenal defense as well. And, we going into that Indiana Hoosiers game this past weekend, Indiana was the number one run defense in all of college football, and Notre Dame ran all over them. So I think to your point, Jerome, the two-headed monster in the backfield with Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love is going to do wonders. And I didn't know where I was leaning with this game. I was leaning Georgia. Like after the game, and even like when you look at the brackets and you're doing the predictions, I was thinking, Notre Dame's going to run into Georgia. It's going to be a tough matchup, even with Gunnar Stockton. But actually, the odds opening up actually are making me feel like the Irish are going to pull this one out, because a lot of the response is like Georgia's going to blow them out. Notre Dame's not battle tested. Georgia's going to win by a touchdown, maybe 2 touchdowns, and they're only favored by 1.5. I think Notre Dame might do it this week or this upcoming round,
yeah.
New Year's Day. I think Notre Dame's going to do it. I like Notre Dame by 4, maybe 5, 6, 7. Somewhere in that range.
I think
Notre
this
Dame's
game.
I think it's going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be a defensive-minded game, a low-scoring game, but I like Notre Dame maybe 24-17.
I think Notre Dame's going to win by 3. I think it's going to be really close, but we'll go 3 for 3 with our prediction. I think Notre Dame's going to win it.
So clean sweep for the Irish here. One thing, I think this is your game that's going to be low scoring. Defense is going to be key in this game. I don't see a
100%.
lot of points, especially again with Georgia, Gunnar Stockton. They're not going to be able to move the ball like crazy. And like you said, Notre Dame, his defense is really good. Georgia's loaded with weapons, though. They are
Right.
every year.
Yep.
The Dogs come ready to play. But I do like the Irish in a close one here. And like I said, we're all going to agree on that. All right, now we get to the granddaddy of them all,
This is going to be
fellas.
another really good game.
The
Yeah.
Rose Bowl, the Ohio State University coming after rolling the Volunteers against
TOSU.
that's right. I like that. Against the Bucks, or against the Bucks against the Ducks. And here we find a rematch of a game that happened in Eugene back in October. Ohio State, I mean,
The most impressive loss of the entire year by any team.
right. And the thing is, football is such a weird sport, because in baseball or basketball, you lose a game and you go, you know what, we'll play tomorrow. We'll play in 24 hours again.
Right.
In football, you have a week to sit there and let it fester. In the case of these playoffs, like Phil brought up, you have 3-4 weeks sometimes. Ohio State not playing the Big Ten title game. If you would have asked me after they lost to Michigan, I would have told you they would have got smoked in the first round of the playoffs. How quickly things have changed, because I like the Buckeyes, baby. Give me the Buckeyes to take care of the Ducks at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I think I like the Buckeyes too, and I think it just goes all the way back to, they're at a neutral site now, so you don't have to worry about the Oregon crowd being too much of a factor.
You know what? And Ohio State travels well. It is on the West Coast, though. It's at the in Pasadena.
I think it's still going to be about a 50-50 split.
Yeah,
maybe
it'll still be a 50-50 split.
Maybe at the most 60-40, but the crowd's not going to be nearly as much of a factor as it was when the game was in Oregon.
I'll agree. I'll agree with that.
Yeah. So, and also it's very hard to beat a team twice in one season. It's very hard to do that.
Yeah.
The losing team typically makes those adjustments. They don't make the same mistakes that they made when they faced the first time. I like the Buckeyes.
Kevin, you stole my thunder. That was going to be my leadoff point. It's hard, but I'll agree with you. It's hard. It's hard to beat the same team 2 times in a row. I'm taking Ohio State off momentum too. Off momentum. I'm very impressed with the Tennessee win. Let's ride that into California, and I really think the weapons and the talent win. And if they can play in a similar way, game plan coming off a loss from this team earlier in the year, the momentum really rides with Ohio State here.
Well, and I think the one point that you made, Phil, that I had thought about a little bit, but now I have to give a little bit more thought to, and you enlightened me a little bit, was it is interesting how these 4 teams, that won the conference championships, how are they going to come back? When you
Jerome,
look at
I'd almost rather have the rest during the conference championship than in the first round.
Yeah. So you think Ohio State did it right?
To a certain extent. You can make that case.
Right. So you're looking at like Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, Arizona State, respectively won the Big Ten, SEC, Mountain West, and Big 12. And so now they got these first round buys. They've been sitting at home. I mean, granted, that they had their scouts there yesterday. I mean, they knew what the bracket looked like. But these teams that had these big first round wins and some of them lopsided, as we talked about, it's going to be really interesting. How does that all correlate? And nobody knows.
Yeah,
because it's the guinea pig year of this thing.
But would we be speaking and we might be speaking a different tune if the first round matchups weren't lopsided, right? If you had to play a hard first round matchup. I think this year, though, it is a testament to seeding, right? Because we've had so many lopsided first round games. So in this year, I'd rather sit out during the conference championship, take the rest week, then play an easier first round opponent, and then kind of come in swinging because I get 10 days, 12 days rest after that anyway, than having a month off.
That's what a lot of people, I know Joel Klatt specifically has mentioned this in his podcast and whenever he's been on with his show, but it all goes down to right now, like the 5 seed is a better seed to have than the 1 seed right now because of how it's structured. The 5 seed gets to face the worst team rankings-wise, the worst qualifier in the playoffs, and they get to face the worst conference championship winner, which is typically a lower seed than we would see that they face in the first round.
Yeah.
Whereas Oregon's got to go, their first game is against Ohio State.
Ohio
State.
Yeah.
So like it's I think they got to reseed after the first round and make sure that the higher seeds always facing the lowest seeds, that we're constantly rewarding the higher seed. Like, what are we playing the regular season for if we're going to give them a tougher
unless we're saying that we don't value each conference the same, right? We don't value a conference.
And they definitely don't.
Yeah,
Maybe
they definitely don't.
They don't value a conference
definitely
championship in X conference versus the Big Ten versus the SEC. That might be what they're saying by not reseeding.
I mean,
you can make the case that to eliminate this is to reseed.
We all know what conference championships they value the most.
It's SEC and Big Ten. It's not even close.
Big Ten and the SEC.
But those are the 2 super conferences, though, at this point, because the other conferences, I mean, we got the Mountain West and Big 12, and Big 12 doesn't even have Texas and Oklahoma anymore.
Then why don't we go down, and this is a larger issue that maybe we could do another show on, is with the whole name and likeness stuff and all this change, why don't we go down to 2 conferences then? They almost need to redefine Division I at this point, especially when it comes to football, because Toledo is a Division I team and Kent State is too, and these mid-major schools.
That's a whole conversation.
But now,
too.
really, we could make 2 super conferences and have all the money flowing there with name and likeness, etc., and kind of fix the problem that way potentially. But you almost need to redefine Division I or have a separate league for these big-time schools that are in these big-time conferences right now. That could be something that they think about doing in the future, and this is the precursor to it.
Yeah, I think it'd be tough to regulate. I think that's a great point, though.
It's definitely a larger scale conversation we could have at some point. Not for tonight, but
yeah.
That would be
we
long
could do an hour
conversation.
On that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's a middle of summer when we got nothing but baseball podcast to talk about.
Oh no, yeah. Let's schedule it.
All right. So we have finished up. Let's move along here. And guys, there's not much to say about the Browns at this point in the year. They get smacked 24-6 by the Bengals.
By producer Eric Spangles.
Yeah, those are producer Derek Spangles. And
He's having a good time over there.
yeah, he's got a big
Yeah.
smile on his face.
Yeah.
Look, big cheese. Big grin. And anyway, I mean, listen, I'm not going to sit here and analyze the game. They're 3-12. They stink. There's not much to say. I don't really think we need to talk about it. But since we have you here as a guest, Phil, I do have a couple larger scale things I want to talk about. Myles Garrett made comments last week that upset some people. Other people thought they were great. I'm on the they were great side. Put this front office on notice. You're an outstanding player. If we want to talk about one thing from the game, the biggest thing I took away from the game was Myles Garrett got his 100th sack. Youngest player to ever do it. Congratulations, Myles. And that's a great personal achievement. Good for him. He's a hell of a player. I hope he retires a Brown. That's where we go with these comments. He knows how great he is. The guy could retire today. He's got a gold jacket and a bust in Canton. He's not going to want to sit through another rebuild. Are they dumb enough that they're going to try to rebuild this thing? They can't. They're the Dodgers of the NFL. They have the highest payroll. So they're in a really bizarre spot. But the other thing I took away from this, Myles Garrett told you without telling you, he ain't playing with number 4 again. That's it. Number 4 stinks, and he's not doing that, and he's not going through the misery of playing with that crappy quarterback, the worst Browns quarterback since '99. He's not doing it.
I have a strong opinion on this, as it seems you do too. So the whole rhetoric we had heard from the Browns organization was, we need to make these quick moves because we can't waste Myles Garrett's prime. We can't waste Nick Chubb's prime. And I'm not going to harp on it. I'll admit I'm kind of a Baker bro, right? I liked Baker.
Yeah.
And I can get into as to why. But because we were so insecure about wasting Garrett's prime and Ward's prime and these players' prime, we hurried up and made this move for Watson, right? And that move ended up shooting ourselves in the foot. And by being insecure and, oh my gosh, we have to hurry up because they're in their prime, we, in sense, wasted their prime by doing that. Yep. We didn't want to waste their prime so bad that we made moves that wasted their prime.
Yep.
Which is classic Browns management, which every fan in this town and internationally, wherever you are, Cleveland fans, you should be extremely upset about with our management. Because I'm not going to, I can sit here and even for more of a broader conversation, say if we had Baker Mayfield right now on this team, we'd be in a much better position.
Oh, it wouldn't even be close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't even be close.
I could push back on that a little bit, but I'll let you talk first.
No, go ahead.
Would you rather have Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson?
Oh, that's not even close.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
that's not even close.
And 3 first-round picks. Maybe we have our left tackle solved. Maybe we have another secondary
and
player.
how much millions of dollars
Exactly.
reinvested into the
back,
team.
the only thing I get pushed back on the Baker is, look, you and I have been friends for a long time. When that trade went down, Phil, you had already left town, right? Yeah, you were gone.
Yeah, I might have been gone.
Yeah, you were gone already because you were, yeah.
Did we preface the episode with that he's from Boston? Or
Yes,
not from
I'm
Boston,
from
but,
Cleveland.
but he lives in Boston.
I live in Boston.
I
moved to
I mentioned
Boston.
that in the opening monologue.
Okay.
I
all
moved to
right.
Boston
I
October
apologize.
of 2021.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're gone. This
was
is
gone.
March of
Yeah.
22.
Yeah.
You and I had many phone conversations about, okay, this is the wrong move to make. My thing at the time was Baker wasn't playing well. And what people in this town often do forget is it took Baker literally to get benched in Carolina by PJ Walker and get claimed on the waivers by the Los Angeles Rams. Like he had to hit rock bottom before he figured things out with the Buccaneers. And if we want to go broad, I still don't know if Baker's ever going to win a Super Bowl. He's a hell of a quarterback. He's really good. My biggest thing was your quarterback, if it wasn't going to be Baker, it didn't need to be that guy who you damn well knew trading for wasn't going to be able to play for a year. And oh, by the way, his last year in Houston won 4 games.
Yeah, well, here's what I'd say to the Baker comment. Baker was playing with a torn labrum.
Right.
And maybe he had to hit rock bottom because he had X amount of coaches in a really short time period when he was still developing. If we were at the game when he got injured, they should have just shut him down there,
That was Baker too.
That was Baker too. That was Baker too. That's where I am critical
Yeah,
of Baker.
100%. Yeah.
That's where I am critical of Baker. And I don't want to have the Baker conversation because he's not our quarterback anymore, right? But if you would have shut him down there, brought him back in the same system that he was finally getting comfortable with, would you rather have him or Deshaun Watson right now and $250 million of guaranteed money back?
And 3 first-round picks.
And how many years back in Chubb and Myles
Exactly.
Garrett's
See, my
careers,
thing
right?
is,
So
if you
that's where I
decided
get
you needed,
upset.
if you decided you needed to upgrade, fine. But there were so many other ways to upgrade that weren't that, and all the baggage and problems and destruction he's caused.
Yeah,
Let me see,
and if I remember correctly, too, correct me if I'm wrong, but when they got Watson, there was a chance he wasn't going to play. He had to settle all this stuff.
No, that's what I said.
First.
That's what I just said. They damn well knew
They could have lost him immediately.
He
and then
wasn't
had
going
no
to
one.
play
Yeah.
that whole first season.
Like you could have brought Baker back. Yeah, maybe you're not going to win a Super Bowl with Baker. I agree with that. But you could have brought him back for a couple more years and gotten the right guy when he was available instead of getting extremely insecure.
Right.
Because you've wasted more of their careers by being insecure and shooting yourself in the foot when trying to shoot from the hip like that.
Right, and looking back on it, it was a stupid trade, even in the moment, because of what you guys are just saying. And, you know, if they want to improve, then sure, I guess go ahead and try to improve. But the way this situation was handled was just absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd.
Right.
The money spent, who you're trading for, it's...
In terms of doing business with someone, that's not right.
I do also want to say really quick, I got to ask you, or tell/ask you, because this is more so Jerome specific, but the fact that you won't even acknowledge that Deshaun Watson was a great quarterback in Houston, because he was. The trade was still stupid. The trade was still stupid in the moment, and they should have never done it, obviously. He was a great quarterback in Houston still.
I'm not acknowledging that.
I don't
he was a
understand.
great quarterback.
I mean,
He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, and the year that they went 4-12, he threw for 4,800 yards, 30-plus touchdowns, and like 6 picks.
The only reason the deal in my head wasn't as bad as it could have been was that he was like 26 still. That's where I got it. Like, oh, he's 26, and he's coming back after a couple years out. He's still young enough. I mean, I was dead wrong now, but that was the only thing I was trying to find a positive in it, you know?
So to get back to what I initially said, Myles Garrett told you he's not playing with this guy.
Right.
Like, that's the way is that how you guys took the comments? Because key
more
line
power
was
to him. Yeah.
money doesn't win championships. He's not playing with this guy. So you're hearing rumors that they want to run this guy back, at least to compete. Guys, here's where I am with it. And you guys tell me if I'm wrong. You write him his check and you tell him you keep him on the roster, because otherwise the money's going to get real complicated. You're going to be even more screwed up in the cap. I literally write him his check and say, thanks, can you leave? Like, you can be on the active roster, but don't come in the building. We don't want you around. Like, that's the way I handle it. And other teams have done that in the past with guys. Houston did it with them.
Houston did it with him.
Houston literally did it with them. They paid him his money and asked him to walk away, and he did. That's what we need to do with them at this point. Let him. You owe him the next 2 years regardless. Pay him and ask him to walk away.
Here's what. Yeah, no, I mean, they got to get someone else. Is where I'm at. Like, we could talk about the past. The present sucks. Like, they're gonna have to get someone else because I think they're saying the right things right now. Also, it makes them look so bad with the contract. You don't want to throw the white flag in here towards the end of the season where you've already been mathematically eliminated. Oh, yeah, we might roll them back out. I think they're saying the right things right now. We're going to see what moves they make in the offseason. They have to bring someone else in, guys.
Right.
They have to bring in another quarterback. And Myles Garrett's the tip of the iceberg with that opinion. And more power to him. He's the leader of the team, and he has all the credibility amongst the fans and amongst his teammates, too.
Yeah, and those comments that you were just mentioning, Jerome, I think they were, while he didn't mention his name, I think they were pretty direct, because the main problem the entire year has been
Deshaun Watson.
quarterback in
Right,
general,
quarterback.
I would say.
Well, that's been the main problem since 1999, Kevin.
Well, exactly. But you look at it, and he's telling you in the press conference, like, I need to know what the plan is. He's basically knowing, are we running this Deshaun guy back, or are we going and grabbing out a veteran quarterback? Do we have a plan to build this thing back up without also rebuilding at the same time? You start unloading all the talent we have on the team right now, you're full rebuild, obviously.
Right.
So, and you don't want, to Phil's point earlier, you're not wasting the primes of these guys anymore. Like, we don't want to waste. Nick Chubb's prime, in my opinion, is basically already over.
Yeah.
So you've wasted Nick Chubb's prime. You don't want to waste the next 2 years of elite Denzel Ward, maybe. You don't want to waste the next 3 years of elite Myles Garrett. Let's get somebody in here, whether it cements us as a Super Bowl contender or not, which realistically it probably wouldn't, but you probably want to make a move that puts you into playoff contention, and when you're in the playoffs, you got a chance. So whether it's, I don't know the situation in Atlanta, I don't know how the money's going to work with Kirk Cousins, I don't know if that's something that you got to trade for, or if they cut him, you can sign him for, a few million as opposed to 20 to 30, because there's no way we can afford that. You can't afford to have $100 million a year invested into 2 quarterbacks. Because that's what it would be.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the goal. The overall goal is the Super Bowl. We need to keep standards high. But with how bad the team's been right now, if you got me a serviceable quarterback that took us to the playoffs, I'd be throwing Tootsie Rolls to the kids down East 9th Street in a parade, because it's been that bad. I'm serious.
No, it's been a really rough year. But this is why we called him the clown in the opening. I mean, he's a funny guy.
Pure entertainment.
He is, And he would, too. When this guy tells you he'd be throwing Tootsie Rolls down 9th Street, don't doubt it.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's one guy to me to get, and I'm going to tell you real quick, and we got to move on, and I'm not wasting time breaking down today's game. That's useless to me. It's a useless exercise.
Although before you get to your point, I will say DTR, for as bad as he's been, I appreciate the hustle and the effort that you put in. If you're listening, DTR, we appreciate the effort. I can tell you're busting your butt. I can tell.
I agree with that. And like I said, I don't want to get into it too much. The kid plays really hard. It's just happening too fast.
Yeah. Well, there's no analysis that can be done for today's game. As one of my good friends says, the math ain't mathin'. And when you're mathematically eliminated, every analysis adds up to 0, man. It's an E next to their name, unfortunately.
Right.
Like
and it's
eliminated.
Eliminated.
As one of my friends said, it doesn't mean extra.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean extra.
Right.
Maybe an extra draft pick if we're lucky.
So anyway, to me, there's one guy to go get. Kirk Cousins is washed. Darnold's going to be too expensive. You're not. We already talked about it. 4's out of the picture. You pay him and politely shake his hand and tell him to go to Siberia. To me, it's Justin Fields. That's the guy. Justin Fields, when he had a chance, 4-2 with Pittsburgh this year, he's not going to cost you what the rest of these guys are going to cost you. He's still young enough that you can see something being there, being drafted in 2021. I like Justin Fields. Maybe my Buckeye, I'm looking through my Scarlet. They're not scarlet and gray colored. Maybe I am, but I got to tell you, I think Justin Fields is the guy. It's not going to cost you a lot, and you need somebody serviceable. He's the guy.
I think it's interesting how the Justin Fields thing is going to play out, not just with the Browns, but just with the NFL in general, because he is a guy that still, while the ceiling might not be as high as when he was drafted, what he gives you mobility-wise, he's still got, obviously, a cannon for an arm. He's a very interesting player that I think would work well on a team that doesn't know whether they're a contender or not. Like, is this a piece that can push us over, or is it just an experiment and we do kind of have to kick things back off and restart something? I don't know if that's the Browns, though. While the Browns are kind of in that position, they're also not, because they have a lot of players on their team that are win now. I don't know if you can afford to do an experiment at quarterback and see if it works or not. I think it's a tough position. I think the ceiling can still be relatively high for Justin Fields. I also think the floor can be extremely low.
Phil, who's the guy?
Yeah, agreed. I think Justin Fields could win some games here. Is he going to put you over the top and make you even an AFC North contender? I don't know, right? And how many more years of that can you do? The unfortunate part for the Browns is that the timing's never been here with a great quarterback draft class. And I'm not one to analyze college quarterbacks as well as you guys did last episode or 2 episodes ago that I listened to, but I'd love to watch how that situation evolves and see if they can potentially move up, because you'd love to get a guy in the draft that's really good, that can develop his career here. That would be great, and I don't think that's a not win now scenario with how quick they throw these rookies in there and how they contribute, because a lot of these players are more dynamic coming out of college in terms of being able to run and throw and just be pure athletes all around than they used to be maybe 10, 12 years ago.
Right.
Justin Fields is a dynamic athlete that's been in the NFL that we've seen something from, right? But I'd rather get a guy in the draft. I just don't think the timing, unfortunately, hasn't opened up for the Browns to where it's a great quarterback draft class. Take your pick. Last time we had that, we picked Baker. But I'd be interested to see how that can continues to evolve, and as draft boards continue to be more deeply analyzed and move up potentially opens up for him.
And to your point, when you're drafting a rookie quarterback, a first round, somebody that's expected to take over and be the franchise guy, it's so tough to throw those guys out there, to your point, and just be like, hey, save us right now. Like, I'm at the point now where if we draft a guy, I would like them to sit for a full year, at least a full year, just so that they can pick up the speed of the game and practice for a full year.
To me, and I agree with that, but to me it depends who's the starter.
Yeah, can you do both?
Well,
Can
yeah.
you get Fields and get a guy and have him sit behind him?
But
What I would like them
Yeah.
to do is get a guy like a Kirk Cousins, if it's something that's reasonably affordable, if we can do it, or a Derek Carr. I don't know what the situation is in New Orleans. I brought that name up before, but I don't know how the money works and stuff like that, and have a rookie sit. That way you can be a potentially contending team, as contending as you can be in the meantime, while also grooming that prospect. These prospects that come in and start immediately, let's look at like Joe Burrow, Andrew Luck. Those are just two off the top of my head that are rare instances and where they start immediately and they're great immediately.
Yeah, wait, real quick question, though, because Kirk Cousins' name has come up a couple times, and I think people have been kind of down on Kirk Cousins. I kind of like Kirk Cousins. Question to you guys,
Well, if
history-wise.
you watch the Falcons tape this year, because it's not pretty.
But let's talk about when he was good. History-wise, was Stefanski in Minnesota when he was
Yep.
there?
Yes.
100%.
Then I like that. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I do too. And when the Steelers signed Russell Wilson, we're like, oh, look at the last couple years in Denver. Maybe it's a system thing. Maybe it's a culture and a system thing that's not working out with Kirk. And we've seen, to Phil's point, when he was working with Stefanski, that was the best Kirk Cousins we've ever seen.
No, listen, I disagree with you guys. I'm not like completely on the opposite end of the spectrum of where you are. But I do disagree with you, because I just look at Kirk's age, and I think a torn Achilles last year. He's come back. He's looked like crap this year for the most part. Like, what is the guy I have left in the tank? And to me, that's why I'm more of I want Justin Fields, because I want someone who's young, still the arrow's still going like this. Maybe not as much as it once was.
Sure.
But Kirk's arrow, it's like, whew.
Let me ask you this. If Justin Fields works something out with the Steelers and stays there, I don't think it's going to happen, but if that happens, or if another team like the Titans or something were to call and see if that's, and Justin Fields decide not going to be a Cleveland Brown, then what are you doing? Are you running Jameis back? Are you going after one of these veteran quarterbacks? Are you trading up for a rookie? What are you doing?
Well,
then?
what I would ask you on the Kirk point you just made, right? Kirk's going down. He's getting older. How'd you feel about Flacco last year? And would you have brought Flacco back this year? To me, it's kind of a similar concept, him and Flacco, right?
I would have probably, I think everybody would have brought Flacco back, but Ford didn't like 15, so 15 was out. I mean, that's the way it went.
I don't know if Andrew Berry liked Flacco either.
Yeah, I don't think he did.
Well, I mean, no, here,
Shout out to Phil Yan.
yeah. But no, Ford didn't like 15, so 15 wasn't staying. That's the way it went. And a lot of people said they couldn't, because, listen, they were like, well, the first incompletion Deshaun's going to throw, they're going to be calling for Flacco. Guys, I was at the first game. The first incompletion he threw, they were calling for Jameis. Like, it didn't matter.
So if Fields isn't here, what's your quarterback plan next year then?
My quarterback plan would probably be, and they're not going to do it, probably Jameis, because I look at Kirk. Kirk's, like I said, I think the arrow's pointing down. Derek Carr, I mean, the money's just ludicrous for what he gives you. I mean, to me, and Darnold, they can't afford Darnold. Darnold's going to get $40 million from somebody.
Whether it's
If
a
they wanted
trade,
Darnold, they should have drafted him.
whether it's a trade or whether it's whatever, in order to get one of these guys, I don't think the Browns are going to have to eat a ton of that money for what Carr's given the Saints, for what Cousins has given the Falcons. I think, much like we would have to eat the money on Deshaun, much like the Broncos would have to eat the money on Russell Wilson, I think those teams would have to eat a lot of that money. I think it could absolutely bail the Browns out.
The Kirk one's the one that logically would make sense.
It makes the most
you
sense.
guys connect the dots with Kevin, Kirk and Kevin. I mean, Kevin was in Minnesota forever. I mean, he started literally getting Brad Childress coffee and worked his way up to the offensive coordinator. I mean, he was there forever. So that one's the one that makes sense. I guess logically,
You'd go Winston over Cousins next year?
Yeah, where's Winston? Does anyone even want Winston if he's not on the Browns? Is he done? Winston's out.
Well, that was
of
the rumor
league.
this
See,
offseason is that basically he had no offers, and then the Browns.
On the other unfortunate part of Winston, he never won over the fan base. The fan base never respected him.
Which is Browns?
The Browns.
Yeah, the Browns.
No, the Browns fans.
No, excuse me, Watson. No, I
Oh.
misspoke. Not Winston.
Yeah, I was
Watson.
gonna
Yeah.
say.
Watson.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
talking about
Oh,
Watson. My bad.
and that's what I said. To go to it. I mean, it didn't matter who the backup quarterback was. I mean, they were calling. I mean, they were yelling for DTR, and I mean, we saw DTR today. He's nothing special. Like you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't ever remember in my lifetime, and I'm not going to speak pre 1999 because I'm a 97 baby. Okay, I'm not going to speak pre that. I have never seen the Cleveland Browns fan base dislike and have such a strong disdain for one player more than him,
Oh,
and it's
never.
all deserved.
Never.
Never.
Yeah. No, but
Yeah.
but again, so correcting myself, Winston or Cousins in that scenario that Kevin asked you. What would you say?
I'd probably
Who are you
I'd
going,
say
Phil?
Jameis because I don't know if you're gonna get.
I'm going with Cousins.
Yeah, I'm going with Cousins
I'm
too.
going with Cousins.
All right, fair enough. All right, let's move on, and we'll find out. We got plenty of offseason.
It'll be
debate there.
interesting. It'll be season 3 of a soap opera. I can
Oh,
assure
yeah.
you
Oh
that.
my
yeah.
god.
Yeah. So let's move on real quick. Want to touch on the Cavs. Just continuing domination. And I know at this point, they're still number 1 seed. They're playing really tough. They're playing the good teams tough. As a Cavs fan, I think you have to just love everything you're seeing right now. I mean, there's nothing to really be upset about. Yes, we haven't even, we're in the holiday season, so we're still got a lot of basketball left to be played. But it might have been one of those things where we've talked about it on the previous pods. Is this all Kenny Atkinson? Is this, Jared Allen made an interesting point that I brought up a couple podcasts ago. You never in the NBA get to play with the same roster twice in a row, and they have. And that's interesting. The continuity,
Good point.
new coach, Ty Jerome, has been great off the bench. Everything's clicking, everything's going well. It's almost like, is it too good to be true? Are they going to come crashing down to earth? Where are you guys with the Cavs?
Yeah, I can start here. I'm happy with the way they're playing. They're playing really strong, fundamental team basketball. They're very disciplined defensively. They have a great offensive flow. I love what Atkinson's done with the rotations, the guys he's putting in, the timing of putting them in. They have the same roster, but Ty Jerome's healthy. He's been a great surprise. I really like what I'm seeing. I'm trying not to get overconfident, and I do think the whole fan base should take a deep breath. And you did precursor of where we're at in the season. This is a marathon season.
Yeah, it is.
This is a long season, and you do have to peak at the right time. And we have the ability to do that, but we can't get too excited yet because I do think different teams, typically teams that are very talented with a top 10 player and really good pieces that are battle tested to the playoffs, are kind of still skating by at this point in the season. They're not really turning it on yet. You have teams in the NBA regular season that are saying, we need to shoot 83s tonight and make 40 of them and try to get our efficiencies up and not wear ourselves out because we're on a West Coast road trip, right? The Cavs aren't playing that way. They're gunning it. They're playing hard every night, which as a fan, I really respect. And I think they're creating the habits for sustainable basketball over the long term of a season. And they'll make the playoffs and be a good team.
Yep.
But some of these teams that are really talented have the ability to turn it on and turn it off a little more. And I don't think they've fully turned it on yet. And I think there's going to be more shooters emerging that are going to be more competitive for them as we progress through the season. I do think they need to be aggressive about getting another piece at the deadline, and especially in the offseason next year, getting another piece, not even to get ahead of ourselves. But
Right.
I'm happy with the roster, but let's not get too overly excited with the winning we've had early in a regular season. We got to peak at the right time. We got to go get a really good piece, hopefully at the deadline, and be aggressive. I don't want them to take their foot off the gas pedal with that.
Yeah, so let me ask you this, Phil, with you obviously living in Boston the last few years, what is the perception in that city, just with them being obviously the defending NBA champions right now? They beat us in 5 last year. Is there a perception in that city of any threat level from the Cavs, or is it kind of like we still have the Cavs number type of thing.
They're laughing at us,
Are they?
unfortunately, in Boston. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, and that's kind of the Bostonian fans are a little rough and tough, as I've told you guys off
Right.
the air. I went to the game when the Cavaliers came to town and experienced their first loss of the season, unfortunately. But the Boston fans are not afraid of the Cavs. They've crowned Tatum as God, and I'm serious. And they're happy with their team. They're very critical of where they're at now. They think they need to turn it on. That was one of those teams I was saying needs to flip the switch a little bit more. But in terms of everyone in town saying in a 7-game series, we're not worried. We did it last year with the exact same roster. What's different this year? And I think there's a lot different with the Cavs this year, and they're forced to be reckoned with. What I will say is I've watched the Cavs play at TD Garden several times. They can't guard Don. They're afraid of Mitchell. That team does not match up well with Mitchell, but he needs – we've had Garland be a little quiet against them. I'm really excited to see how that matchup continues to evolve because the East runs through Boston right now. It really does.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely does. And I feel like even, when they were rebuilding, when they had traded their big pieces, KG, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen, everybody was laughing that, the fact that they got as much as they did for those guys and then immediately within 4 years were a finals threat again. Like that's just an organization. It kind of reminds me a lot of like the Pittsburgh Steelers in the NFL, whereas everything they do, it seems like is the right move. They're a classy organization when it comes to free agent moves, trades, re-signings. They treat their players right. It seems like outside of Marcus Smart, as soon as they trade him, they win the finals basically. But they're a tough team. They're going to be a tough team, and I still don't think that the Cavs have reached that level that they'd be able to beat them in a 7-game series, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I've said on the podcast, I'm not scared of anybody in the East as the Cavs. I'm not, I think the toughest one is Boston. But I mentioned this probably 4 or 5 podcasts ago, and I still, to me, the Eastern Conference is Boston, Cleveland, New York. Big gap, everybody else.
I'd have to throw Milwaukee in there.
See,
with talent.
They might be one of
and
those teams that
development.
turn it on, but I've also stated on this podcast, Doc Rivers is the most overrated coach in NBA history, I believe.
He probably is up there.
Okay,
honestly.
so Milwaukee doesn't have a great coach. I don't really believe they're an aging roster. To me, and if you put Milwaukee in there, that's fine. I'm not. To me, the Boston, Cleveland, New York gap. That's the way I look at the NBA Eastern Conference.
I have Milwaukee in there personally.
Yeah, no, that's what you said, and that's
I
fine.
throw Milwaukee in there. You can't discredit Giannis and Lillard, just the talent level. Like, talent really wins in the NBA. We were talking about this offline. Like, you really have to have a top 10 player nowadays. I think Mitchell hovers in and out of that. I think overall in aggregate this year, he'll probably land in the top 10. But Giannis is clearly proven, has won a championship before. Damian Lillard's a top point guard in the league. I think they need to put it together. I don't think Doc Rivers is a great coach, and he's the guy that's going to expedite that. But you'll win a lot of games just having those guys. And I think that roster is a little more talented than the Cavaliers. Do the Cavaliers play better team basketball together? Yeah, that's easier for me to root for as a fan. But as the season continues to unfold, that's a team I'd watch is Milwaukee too.
Well, I agree with you, and if like I just stated my top 3, right? It's clear as day who I think. But if there's one that I think is like the closest to getting to that top 3, to me it is Milwaukee.
Yeah, okay.
And you're right with the talent level on Giannis. I do think that's an aging core though, like around those two. That's a big time aging core, and that might be a team that we'll see right now if they reshape themselves at the deadline. I think they're going to have to.
They might. Yeah, they might. With the pressure Giannis and Lillard brings having them on the roster. Middleton's like an aging star who's been in and out of injury that I'm, he goes back and forth. I'm not totally sold on
Chris
him
Middleton,
as a strong piece.
that guy probably hasn't played like 80 games in years.
I hate to say this because I don't want to discredit the Cavs, but it's like this, if the Warriors had this roster back when they had, or if the Warriors had this record at this point in the season, back when they had Steph, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, the Warriors we grew up rooting against, like, we're like, wow, they're going to run away with it. Because the talent's backing the roster, we are a talented bunch, but we're winning really well right now because we play together. There's other more talented teams that haven't turned it on yet, is all I'm saying. So I'm not crowning them yet. I still think they can win, and they're gonna win in the playoffs. They got to get to the ECF in order to call this a success.
Okay, I was literally just
Yeah.
going to ask you that. Yeah, I had said it in last week's episode as well. I think if you don't reach the Eastern Conference Finals this year, it's a complete failure.
It's
of
a
season.
failure
they
of
got
a
to get to
season.
the
It
ECF.
absolutely is.
Because you got to the semis last year, it wasn't good enough. Your organization stated that when you gave JB Bickerstaff his pink slip.
Yeah,
You got to the
100%.
Eastern Conference semifinals, said this isn't good enough for the talent level we have. You decided to go get a new coach. To me, if that new coach doesn't get there, I'm right with you guys. It's a total failure and it's a lost year. I don't give a rat's crap what you did in December or October. If you're not in the Eastern Conference finals, failure. Don't care.
It is seriously, I called it a marathon because it's the same thing in marathon training. You got to peak at the right time.
Right.
And it's like early on in the training cycle, you're not ripping it too hard because it's a long year. You got to win games. I want the Cavs to win every game they play too and develop really good sustainable habits. I want them to be playing great basketball in March though.
Right.
I want them to be playing like this in March. If they're playing like this in March, I'm really, really happy. March hasn't come yet. So I want to be playing this good in March into April into May. That's the second season, and they got to peak for that. If we played this great now and February comes around and March comes around, we get some injuries and we're shooting ourselves in the foot and we didn't upgrade at the deadline and we're not going to make the ECF and we might not make the ECF. Like I'm a little frustrated with that, right?
One big thing with the Cavs that I think is going to be interesting is you've seen a lot of guys, and Kenny Atkinson's played them deep, right? Like he's played a deep bench. I mean, we've seen Tristan Thompson play a lot of minutes, like here and there, scattered. We've seen it. This is a deep team. To me, what will be interesting to watch in the formation of the Cavs, like you say, as we get deeper and deeper, what's every team do? You start cutting that rotation. So who are going to be his 8 or 9 on a consistent basis late in the year, early in playoffs, throughout the playoff run that he's going to play? That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah,
Well,
and
especially
I
when
hope the whole core stays healthy too.
Well, especially when the trade deadline comes along, we don't know who we're going to add. Maybe we trade some of this core to try to improve and get that 3 position better. Like we don't know, so it is going to be interesting come playoff time or towards the end of the year how that 8 to 9 man rotation is going to look. It's going to be interesting.
That I'm the one saying this. I mean, this is just shocking for me, but the Okoro injury is a little bit more than I would have ever considered it. Like Isaac Okoro hurt. Well, the team's going to be better. That was always my thought in the past. Now it's like Isaac Okoro's hurt. Well, the guy's playing really good basketball this year. It's kind of a little bit of a loss.
Last 2 years, honestly. Last year he was a good player in this rotation.
And honestly, guys, it might be trading a guy like Ty Jerome, who's
Right.
boosted his trade value really high.
Yeah.
And if assets are available, that could be a guy you pair with something else to flip. And I love Ty Jerome. He could contribute to this team full year. I just really think you got to upgrade, man. You got to flex your muscle coming to the playoffs with these guys. You got to have the talent.
It could be. I think Ty Jerome's been so important to the core piece, though, that would be almost. I don't want to call Ty Jerome an untouchable, but I think he would be like they're desperate as hell. So now sure, like we'll trade a
But
huge
here's
piece
an
of it.
interesting thing for you. We talk about Boston, and they're where we want to get, right? Well, last year at the deadline, they traded for Xavier Tillman and DMP'd him the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So do you have to make that big move?
No, but we don't have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's what they would say, at least to you.
right.
He plays devil's advocate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
full
But
circle
like
again.
I said, do you? And that's the way I'm looking at it. What do you need to? Like if everybody's healthy and they're, let's say they keep playing like this when the deadline comes around, and that's ways away. But if you're playing this well, maybe you make a couple minor additions here and there, but you don't go, bat crap crazy, flipping your entire roster upside down. That's what desperate teams do. Like
Yeah,
I
no.
think of like
The 2018 Cavs.
No,
No,
Thank you.
don't
That's-
flip the roster. I think we need one more guy, is what I'm saying.
like think about LeBron's last year here. They literally got rid of like 8 of the 12 guys at deadline day that they were changed out. Like you don't need to do anything like that. Like 'cause
Right.
I didn't know if that's what you meant.
No,
you kept
I
talking
meant
about
like
big
one
move.
guy, one move. But don't sit on your hands and be like, oh, we're fine. We have the best record.
Well,
in the league.
that frustrates me
because
too.
you might have the best record in the league, but it's a little inflated at this point. Is all I'm saying. That because it's relative, right? So
Right.
don't sit on your hands and be like, oh, we're fine. We don't need to do anything. No, if there's a piece available, be aggressive. Give me one more guy. Don't flip the roster. You don't want to disrupt the flow they have because there's value in that.
Well, yeah, and to your point, like I do think the regular season record right now for the Cavs is a little bit inflated because they started out obviously 15-0, and I believe they're like 9-4 in their last 13. I believe I was reading something like that.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, they're
which seems a little bit more
25-4.
realistic of kind of where this team's going to head. Like, hopefully they are in that 60 to 65 win range. Which should hopefully, I mean, you at that point you'd think solidified top 2 seed, hopefully a 1 seed. Anything below the top 2 seed right now, I think would be a disappointment though going into the playoffs.
And to your guys' point about Boston, like we're talking about the great start. I mean, Boston's only 2.5 back. Like they're still playing great too.
Oh yeah,
So,
100%. And we talk about the hot start the Cavs came, and it seemed like the Cavs were almost untouchable. Like obviously 15 games in, it seemed like running away with the 1 seed. Like to Jerome's point just now, 2.5 games back. Like, and to your point from about 10 minutes ago, Phil, with how long that this season is, anything can happen.
It's more the knock on the NBA season, right? Like the
Right.
NBA season's so long now that some of these guys don't even train in the offseason. It takes them 15 games to get into shape.
Right,
Right. And
right.
that's the majority of your roster. Oh, now we're starting
Yeah.
behind. No, the Cavs are running away with it. That's all I'm saying is these other rosters are going to come into their own here in the middle of the year, and we'll have to
Yep.
compete hard.
That's
We'll have to compete
absolutely
hard.
right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right. Well, hey, thanks so much for coming
Thanks
into
for having
town.
me. It was a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
Oh, dude.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks a
Thank
lot
you so
for being
much
here.
for coming on.
Coming out from Boston, and well, that'll just about do it for us. For producer Derek, for Phil the Clown Sprons, and for Kevin. I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday season with you and your families. Hope you have warm holiday wishes from all of us to you here at Cleveland Sports Realm, and talk to you guys next week.
Go Cavs.
Merry Christmas.
Go Cavs.